Now, while I don't encourage that, but I mean, you have to do whatever you can, but also it's my responsibility to remind you of the imminent danger in doing that. Now, food poisoning is one of the imminent dangers in eating unhealthy foods, and of course, not being supervised or cautious about what you eat. So the conversation for today is food poisoning. Now, I'm not talking about the poison they put in the food for somebody to, I mean, ordinarily when I say this, it would take us back to the Nollywood scenes where we have people just put something in a paper. Why is it always in a paper though? Put something in a paper and then sprinkle it around the food and put it back in your clothes and all of that. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about food poisoning. And now, food poisoning is a type of foodborne illness, a sickness people get from something that they ate or drank. So it doesn't necessarily mean to be a bad thing. You have eating a poisonous thing. Then some things are not just compatible with the system, or combining two foods together might not just be compatible enough for the system. And that is how food poisoning comes about. It is a type of foodborne illness, and it's a sickness people get from something they ate or they drank. Now, the causes are germs or harmful things in the food or beverage. Now, symptoms of food poisoning oftentimes include upset stomach, diarrhea, and vomiting. When you notice all of these things, it's most likely food poisoning, and you of course know what you're supposed to be doing at this point. Go to the doctor, because I hear people say if it persists after 24 hours, then see your doctor. Don't wait for it to persist 24 hours. As long as you feel some level of discomfort in your system, it is important that you head over to the doctor, because they'll be the ones to diagnose you and let you know what the problem is, and possibly prescribe drugs that could ease the situation. It usually starts with people who oftentimes have food poisoning. It usually starts within hours or several days of eating the food. Now, most people is immediately they eat the food, they start to exhibit some of these symptoms. Now, most people have mild illnesses and get better without treatment. But sometimes food poisoning causes severe illness or complications. Now, I never really paid attention to something of this particular thing, but I noticed particularly shawarma. I know we all love to eat it, and it's just like the whole mark of enjoyment for some people. They have to eat shawarma every single day, and it's not something I'm very particular about. But I noticed the first time I ate that, I was constantly vomiting. I had stomach upset and I had diarrhea as well. The second time it happened, the third time it happened, and I was not just allowing myself to guess that it was shawarma, because it's supposed to be a healthy meal. We have vegetables, we have protein, we have all of those things there. So obviously it's supposed to be a healthy food, and of course it's made in a very hygienic environment, so it is supposed to be healthy. I was telling myself many times, until most recently I decided to try that again, and I had the exact same reaction. But when I went to the hospital, I was told it's food poisoning. Some things are not just compatible with your system. Maybe the method of preparation, or how the things that are contained in the food, having all of them together might not just be fit for you. But food poisoning causes severe illnesses or complications, because for days I would not be able to eat anything. My stomach is still very fragile and all of that. So it is important that we notice these things. So I started to read about it, and I thought, it's good to have the conversation right here on radio. So food poisoning. Now, the major symptoms again of food poisoning, although the symptoms vary depending on what is causing the illness, right? So they may begin within a few hours or a few weeks, depending on the cause. And like I said, some people, it's very rapid. For some other people, it takes time before they start to exhibit the symptoms. But the most common symptoms for food poisoning are upset stomach. You most likely have an upset stomach, vomiting, diarrhea, and most times you see the people vomiting and stooling at the same time because of things like this. Now, diarrhea with bloody stools, stomach pain and cramps, fever, and headache. Now, less often, food poisoning affects the nervous system and can cause also severe disease. Like I said, everything can be treated from the onset. Everything can be dealt with when they are noticed from the formative stages. Now, some of these severe symptoms may include blurred or double vision. You have a headache, loss of movement in limbs. You have problem with swallowing, because when you keep throwing up, you now have the throat swell. There's some level of redness or tenderness. I don't know how doctors call it now, but you have it right there because of the constant vomiting. So you have problems with swallowing. Now you have tingling or numbness of skin. Tingling or numbness of skin. That way you need to see your doctor. Then you experience weakness as well, and changes in sound of the voice. Changes in sound of the voice. If you experience any one of these things, it is very important that you see a doctor. Now, for children who might not be able to speak about these things, vomiting and diarrhea can quickly cause low levels of blood fields for them, which is also called dehydration in infants and in children as well. But this can cause serious illnesses in infants, like food poisoning. So you need to see a doctor. Call your child's healthcare provider if your child's symptoms include vomiting, diarrhea, and any of the following, such as unusual changes in behavior or thinking, excessive thirst, little or no urination, weakness, dizziness, diarrhea that lasts more than a day, vomiting often, stools that have blood or pores, stools that are black or tarry, severe pain in the stomach or rectum, any fever in a child that are under 2 years of age. Remember when we talked about malaria here, and we said some of the misconceptions of malaria is every fever is being translated as malaria. But once you have a fever, do not wait for 24 hours. You notice that there's a change in your body. Just go to the doctor immediately so that they can check you out and now salvage the situation so that it doesn't deteriorate. So any fever in a child under 2 years should be considered urgent and should be taken to the doctor. Now, fever of 102 degrees Fahrenheit, we now have thermometers that makes it very easy for you to check your temperature at home. But if the fever of the child is 102 degrees Fahrenheit, that's about 38.9 degrees or higher in other children, you should see a doctor. And then history of any medical problems, you should also see your doctor. Now, when to see your doctor also as adults is adults should see a healthcare provider or get emergency care if any of the following I'm going to be talking about occurs in your system. Now, adults should see a healthcare provider or get emergency care if the nervous system symptoms such as blurry vision, muscle weakness, and tingling of skin. Now, if there are changes in your thinking or your behavior, and if you have fever of 39.4 degrees, then vomiting often, diarrhea that lasts more than 3 days, and symptoms of dehydration, excessive thirst, dry mouth, little or no urination, severe weakness, dizziness, or lightheadedness. So it is super important for you to take all of these things into cognizance. Hello. Yes, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, welcome and thanks for joining us on the show. All right. So yes, if you have questions or if you have contributions as regards food poisoning, if you have any experience about this and you like to ask questions or be a part of the conversation, of course, you know that you can always reach out on 09073 530044 or 09087 668888. You can also leave us a message on WhatsApp on 09097054450. It's the Mind and Body segment of the show, and we're basically talking food poisoning. Give us a few minutes, and when we get back, we'll keep up this conversation, letting us know the things that we need to know about food poisoning. I'll be right back.
Do you have questions about your health? Well, look no further. On Mind and Body, you are our business. Tune in as we discuss with health experts on everything that concerns you and your well-being. Mind and Body. Mondays, 11 a.m. on Eagles 102.3 FM, Abuja.
Are you guys ready?
Goes sounds like this.
I don't wanna be somebody without your body.
102.3 Abuja.
Are you looking for an internet service that will make surfing on the internet an enjoyable one? Do you want a super fast connection to the internet? Are you looking for an internet service that will make surfing on the internet an enjoyable one? Do you want a super fast connection to the internet? Look no further, as Eagles Internet Services is here for you, an effective internet service provider with 99% proven reliability for residential and office services. We provide unlimited internet bandwidth services of different bundles tailored to meet your desires and taste. It is reliable, affordable, with a wide coverage. You can locate them at Plot 1719 Cadastral Zone B, Kaura District, or you can call 081 33 12 1423 or 090 65 76 5969. Eagles Internet Service. Stay connected to everything you love.
Righty, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still tuning to Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja, and this is your radio experience you can count on. If you're just joining us, it's the Mind and Body segment of the show, and it's where we get to talk about the health and your health basically. And today's topic is centered around food poisoning, and we said that food poisoning is a type of foodborne illness. It is a sickness people get from something they eat or they drink or they ate or drank. Now the causes are germs or other harmful things in the food or beverage. Symptoms of food poisoning include upset stomach, diarrhea and vomiting, and it usually starts within hours or several days of eating the food. So most people have mild illnesses and get better without treatment, but sometimes food poisoning causes severe illness or complications as well. Now the general symptoms we say vary depending on what is causing the illness, and they may begin within a few hours or few weeks depending on the cause. And the most common symptoms of food poisoning are upset stomach, vomiting, diarrhea with bloody stools and stomach pain and cramps. We have fever and headache as well. Now less often, right, food poisoning affects the nervous system and can cause severe diseases. It's not common, but I mean it can happen, like blood vision or double vision, headaches, loss of movement in limbs, problems with swallowing that comes from the constant vomiting, and just makes your throat sore in such a way that it becomes difficult for you to swallow. Then tingling or numbness of skin, weakness, and changes in sound of the voice. Now, when to see a doctor? We say for infants and children, the vomiting and diarrhea can quickly cause low levels of body fluids, also called dehydration, and in infants and children as well, they can cause serious illnesses. So call your child's health provider as soon as you notice symptoms like vomiting, diarrhea, and some of these ones, such as unusual changes in behavior or thinking, excessive thirst, little or no urination, weakness, dizziness, diarrhea that lasts more than a day. But I don't recommend that you wait for it to get to a day first. As soon as you notice, you go and see a doctor. Now, stools that have blood or pus, and then stools that are black or tarry, severe pain in stomach or rectum, and any fever in a child that is under 2 years of age should also be you should see a doctor for that. Now, for adults as well, you should see a health provider and get an emergency care if your nervous system symptoms such as blurry vision, muscle weakness, and tingling of skin, and also changes in thinking or behavior, fever about 39.4 degrees Celsius, vomiting often, diarrhea that lasts more than 3 days, and symptoms of dehydration, excessive thirst, dry mouth, little or no urination, severe weakness, dizziness, and lightheadedness. Now, let's go to some of the causes of food poisoning. Now, many germs or harmful things called contaminants can cause foodborne illnesses. Food or drink that carries a contaminant is called contaminated. When you have a contaminant, it can be called a contaminated food. And food can be contaminated with bacteria, with viruses, with parasites that can live in the intestines, with poisons, also called toxins, bacteria that carry or make toxins, and molds that make toxins. Molds are those I think it's caused by heat most times. I think we did talk about it here. It happens to your walls at home, tomatoes, and all of those things. Now, like I said, food can be contaminated by bacteria, by viruses, by parasites that can live in the intestines, poisons, also called toxins, bacteria that carry or make toxins, and molds that make toxins as well. And that's why it is always advised that before you eat somewhere, ensure that it's a very hygienic place. It is clean enough for you to eat. Ensure that their process of making this food is hygienic and it's clean enough. And that's why I don't quite recommend people eating roadside foods, because number one, they are already exposed to germs, already exposed to bacteria, because it's in the open. It's in the open, so anything can just fall in, anything can perch at any time. And some of us, we even go to eat where we have a lot of these mosquitoes perching on the food, and we just continue eating our food. We have cockroaches, roaches, we have rodents, all of these things. We eat in a very unhealthy environment, and we eat from very unhealthy places. So yes, I love street food. There are people who eat it every single time. So, but if you're going to eat a street food, now I'm talking about people who buy suya, people who buy akara, all those things on the road. Ensure that it's very hot, because we know that jams cannot be preserved in very hot or very cold situations, and that's why these are one of the ways to preserve food under heat. Anything that passes through heat, any jam that passes through heat dies, or anything that is frozen can also kill jams. So if you must eat by the roadside, ensure that it is hot, and you're taking it when it's hot and all of that. But I don't advise eating roadside foods or anything of the sort, since you don't know how these things are being prepared. But yes, these are some of the things that can cause your food to be contaminated, and then eventually cause what they call it again, food poisoning. Now, the term food poisoning is commonly used to describe all foodborne illnesses. A healthcare provider might use these terms to be more specific. They can say foodborne illnesses, which means all illnesses from any contaminated food or beverage. Now, food poisoning illnesses specifically from a toxin in food. Food poisoning is a type of foodborne illness. Just to reiterate that, I beg your pardon. Now, how can food be contaminated? How food becomes contaminated. Now, it can be contaminated at any point. It's either from the farm or the fishery to the table. The problem can begin during growing, harvesting, or catching, processing, storing, shipping, or even preparing the food. Now, food can be contaminated any place it is handled, including your house. Food can also be contaminated in your house, so it doesn't even have to be outside. If you don't observe proper hygiene when you're cooking, if you don't do certain things to keep your environment clean, your food can also be contaminated at home. The ones that you buy from the marketplace, at least you know when you go to the market to buy meat, you already know that you need to wash it with salt. You know, you can use lime or lemon. You can also use vinegar to just wash it off before you eat it, since you know it's most likely contaminated because it is sold in the open. Now, but for the house or anywhere, food can be contaminated by poor hand washing. Now, feces that remain on the hands after using the toilet can contaminate food. And some of us, we have refused to adopt the habit of washing our hands. Remember COVID, it was a thing. It was a thing when you go out, you come back in, you have to wash your hand at all times. Once you make it a habit, you just find yourself doing it easily. If you go somewhere, you get back, you wash your hand properly, when you want to touch a surface, you wash if you have touched a dirty surface, you wash your hand before picking up food to eat or before preparing food at all. So if you go to the toilet as well, if you use the toilet either to ease yourself or to defecate, whatever one you're going there to do, ensure that you wash your hands. Wash it before eating because it can contaminate food. Wash it before preparing other food. Now, other contaminants can be transferred from hand during food preparation or food serving. Whatever the case may be, just ensure that you wash your hand properly. Now, if you're not disinfecting your cooking area, if you're not disinfecting your cooking or your eating areas, it can also contaminate your food. That unwashed knives, cutting boards, or other kitchen tools that can spread contaminants. Remember, these things are left in the open. You don't just lock your cutting boards or your knives somewhere. Some of us even have some very beautiful ways of displaying these things. But before we use it, it is important that we disinfect before cooking with it. The knife or any one of these things, cutting boards, kitchen tools, hand towels, because some of us have dirty hand towels in our kitchen, and then we wash our hand and come back and clean it with dirty hand towels, which obviously means that you're recycling the dirt that you just washed. So ensure that your hand towels, are kept clean. Now, if you cannot maintain hand towels, you can use paper towels, so that you can dispose immediately you use. Now, improper storage also is one thing that can contaminate food left out for too long or at room temperature can become contaminated. Food stored in the refrigerator for too long can spoil. Also, food stored in the refrigerator or freezer that is too warm can spoil. So whatever the case is, ensure that you store your food properly before you put your food in the freezer. That's if you have hot food, put it in the freezer, it will get bad. The fact that it's cold doesn't mean it automatically preserves it. You let it cool down for a bit and then you put in the freezer. But improper storage also contaminates food. And for some people, the freezers or the fridge where they are putting these things is not cleaned properly. There's still dirt around it. It's still dirty. Some of these insects and all of those things there, you don't clean it regularly and then you put your food there, it will be contaminated. Next thing, you have diarrhea or you're vomiting or you're lightheaded or one of the symptoms that we did talk about right there. So storing your food properly is one way that you can storing your food improperly is one way that you can contaminate your food. So it's important that you store the food properly, you disinfect your cooking or eating areas, and then you wash your hands regularly to ensure that your food and your space is clean as well. So yes, I guess these are the few things that we can talk about. Now, other sources of food contamination can be bacteria. Bacteria that causes foodborne illness can also be found in swimming pools, in lakes, in ponds, rivers, seawater. Also, some bacteria such as E. coli, can be spread by exposure to animals carrying the disease. So if an animal is carrying the disease, remember one time we talked about the anthrax disease here on air, and we said it can be passed from animals to humans. So before you're going to be eating anything like bushmeat or any one of those things that are exposed and prone to any one of these diseases, you should be careful before eating them. And at that time, we even did encourage people to completely stay off eating anything of the sort. Now, some of the risk factors in food poisoning, because a lot of us, when we have diarrhea or we are vomiting, we just assume that it's something mild, so we don't go and seek medical attention. Remember, I said that when things are discovered at the onset, when things are discovered at the, should I say, growth period, before it deteriorates, you can deal with it. Every single illness can be dealt with if they are detected on time, or if you know about them on time and you seek help, then it can be treated. But if you don't, it will not be treated. So anyone can get food poisoning. Some people are more likely to get sick or have more serious disease or complication. But there are people who have, when they have this, it can become very severe conditions, and it's like infants and children. Remember, we say any high fever for any child from 2 years old should be considered serious and should be taken to the doctor. So risk factors, people, infants and children, they are at high risk for getting it, especially because when you have toddlers, they tend to pick stuff from the ground and put in the mouth. They go to school, you cannot fully censor what they eat or how they eat what they eat. It can even be their food, that you give them from home. They eat, spill it on the ground or spill it on their table, and then pick it up and eat, and it's a very dirty surface. And that's why you need to take them where they can be supervised while eating. So infants and children, they are prone to this. Pregnant people as well are prone to food poisoning. They had high risk of getting food poisoning. And then older adults, that people who are now of age and probably might not be able to look after themselves as much as they would when they were much younger. So these people also are prone to having food poisoning. Now, also people with weakened immune system due to other disease or treatment, people like people who have sickle cell, people who have terminal illnesses, they already have an underlying condition. If they're at high risk, if they contact or if they eat things that are not appropriate, they can be at high risk of getting or food poisoning. Now, in most healthy adults, complications are uncommon, but like I said, some of these things can be found when you have what they call it again, a food poisoning. And I'll just be explaining some of the things that I already mentioned. Dehydration is the most common complication. It's a severe loss of water and salt and minerals. So both vomiting and diarrhea can cause dehydration because you are losing water while you're vomiting. So you need to drink as much water. And that's why when people get dehydrated, when people vomit a lot when they are ill, they give them ORS or they give them energy drinks so that it can boost, their energy and, help deal with the weakness. But when you're vomiting and diarrhea, you're both losing water from your body. So dehydration comes next. Now, most healthy adults can drink enough fluids to prevent dehydration, but children and older adults and people with weakened immune system or other illnesses may not be able to replace the fluids that they have lost in their body through diarrhea or vomiting. So they are more likely to become dehydrated. Now, people who become dehydrated may need to get fluids directly into the bloodstream at the hospital. Now, severe dehydration can cause organ damage, other severe diseases and death if they are not treated. Now, complications of this systemic disease, some contaminants, like we said, can cause more widespread disease in the body. So it's also called systemic disease or infection. And that's why you hear children say, my stomach is mostly infection, right? Due to what they have eaten or what they drank. So this is more common in people who are older, like we said, and have weakened immune system, or children, or people who have medical conditions, underlying medical conditions. Systemic infections from foodborne bacteria can also cause blood clots in the kidneys. And remember, we call that bacteria E. coli. It can result in blood clots that block the kidneys filtering system. Now, this condition is called hemolytic syndrome, and it results in the sudden failure It results in the sudden failure of the kidneys to filter waste from the blood, and less often other bacteria or viruses may cause this condition. Now, we also have complications like bacteria in the bloodstream. Bacteria in the bloodstream can cause diseases in the blood itself or spread diseases to other parts of the body. Now, we also have meningitis, we have sepsis. Meningitis is inflammation that may damage the membranes and fluid surrounding the brain and the spinal cord, and that's why you see, there was a time that meningitis justice campaign was one very popular campaign here in Nigeria. We don't have a lot of it, people coming down with that anymore, because I mean the campaign was very it was a massive campaign here in Nigeria, and it was dealt with. But I mean, meningitis is also a complication of this systemic disease, and sepsis. Sepsis is an overreaction of the immune system to systemic diseases that damages the body's own tissues as well. So yes, these are the things. Like, again, I'll remind us before we head out of this hour, because our time is fast spent. The ways that we can prevent food poisoning at home is to wash your hands regularly. Again, wash fruits and vegetables, because some of us don't wash these things properly. We just slice them or put them in the basket, pour water, and then we pour them in the pot. Aside from preventing sand from transferring into the pot, you also want to wash it properly. Fruits and vegetables, wash them under running water before eating, peeling, or preparing, because they have been exposed and they might have germs or bacteria that might cause you food poisoning. Now, wash your kitchen utensils thoroughly, cutting boards, knives, other utensils, pots, whatever, with soapy water after contact with raw meat or unwashed fruit or unwashed vegetables. Don't just rinse it with water and put it back. Wash it properly. Now, don't eat raw or uncooked meat or fish. I see this a lot on the internet space. I don't know. I see people eat salmon raw. I don't think it happens in this part of the country, but don't eat raw or uncooked meat. Use a meat thermometer to make sure your meat is cooked enough. Cook whole meat and fish at least 145 degrees, 63 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, and cook for a few minutes. Cook ground meat for a whole I don't want to give precise means, but when your meat is cooked, but just cook it, because anything that passes through fire, again, like I said, is purified. They taught us this in economics, not economics, sorry, home economics. So refrigerate or freeze leftovers. Put leftovers in covered containers. Don't just put them in the plate and put in the freezer or put in the fridge, but put them in covered containers in the refrigerator right after your meals. And now they can be kept for a period of time. Don't keep for 5, 6, 7 days, because remember, you've already eaten from it. At least 3 to 4 days in the refrigerator. If you don't think you eat them within 4 days, freeze them right away. Now, cook leftovers safely. We have microwaves these days, so we don't have to necessarily cook all the way again. Now, moldy food, throw moldy food out. Molds, we talked about it here. Tomatoes, you have those whitish things. Some of them look like wool on the food. Once you see that, resist the urge to